Hello, hello, hello. I'm just going to check. We're live. Yes, we're live. Hello, we're live in La Patisserie kitchen. Bread making session today. Can't find my words. Okay, so wherever you are, I'm sure you're all at home. Wherever you are, wherever your homes are, and you're all stuck inside. And some of you are thinking, shall I make my own bread? I'm not going to get out to the shops as often as possible. We used to do, obviously. In France here, we buy our bread in the boulangerie and we buy it fresh every day. So I rarely make bread. But I thought I'd stick my neck out and show you a couple of really simple recipes. One is simple white bread mix with a soft, there's no crust, it's nice and soft. Really lovely. The kids will love this as well. Jam sandwiches, all the stuff that they'd like to eat. And the other one is for the people that can't get any yeast. Now I know we've got a problem with yeast. I managed to get some the other day, but there were a couple of people online saying, help, you can't get yeast, we don't know where to get it, it's all sold out. So we're going to make a simple bread using baking powder. It's not obviously going to be the same texture or the same type of bread as you're used to, but we'll see what you think. The one thing about the baking powder bread is you don't need it. You don't need to break the gluten, you don't need it because there's no yeast in it. You've got no raising agent. So your baking powder just works automatic, put the teeth back in. It just works automatically like when you put it into a cake or anything else. It just rises on its own when it's added to all the other ingredients. So that's fairly simple to make. If you don't have a dough hook or a mixer with a dough hook, don't worry, you can do them both by hand. It just takes a little bit more work. So I'm going to make this really quick and simple. In here I've got 2 cups of plain flour. In France we don't have self-raising flour. Now you can buy what they call farine à pâtisserie, which is has a baking powder element in it, a bit like self-raising flour. But we just use a normal, for those people who are over here, farine de blé, which is just a normal plain flour. So 2 cups, which is 700 grams of the plain flour. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my salt into that flour and mix that in. Because what we don't want to do is have the salt touching the yeast, otherwise it will kill the yeast. We're starting off with the simple bread recipe with powdered yeast. You can use fresh if you're lucky enough to have it. So 2 teaspoons of salt going in there. And I'm just going to literally shut that down and turn it on and literally just mix that in, because then there's no danger of a lump of salt touching my yeast mixture. So I've got I've done a double mix here, so I've got 700 grams. You can make half this amount, but if there's a lot of you might as well make the 2. So we're going to do 2 cups of warm water. Okay, it's just tepid. It's not hot, but it's quite warm. It activates the yeast quicker. So that's in my bowl there, and into that I'm going to put my 2 sachets of yeast, or 5 teaspoons if you buy it in a larger container, something like this. So I'm just going to empty my sachets in there, and we're going to let that just melt into the water. Obviously it's not easy to adapt, because really most of us are very spoiled. What we want, when we want, and if we fancy something, we can usually get access to it, which is quite a sad reflection on how inflexible we are in times of need. Because we don't need to think. We just go to the shops and we buy, I don't know, a ready-made meal. Marks and Spencer's, Waitrose, other supermarkets obviously are out there. But, ready-made meals, a pizza, a Chinese takeaway. And the culture has been very much of, I want, I get. there's no real problem in finding things. And obviously at the moment we are in a situation which is unprecedented in our lifetime, for all of us, I imagine. I don't think in anybody who would be watching this it's likely to have happened before. And the difficulty of this is that we have to then be able to adapt. And our kids at school now are not taught, as far as I'm aware, home economics, you know, the science of food. Why do we need to warm the water? Why do we need to put the yeast in? And next thing I'm going to do is actually put my sugar in, which is 2 tablespoons of granulated sugar. Why? Because we need to feed the yeast. So yeast is a living organism and it needs warmth and food, a bit like a human being. And so what we need to do is we need to feed that mix. So there's 1 tablespoon going in. And I'll just bump that up a little bit. There we go. And that's my second one. So I just stir that around. Yeah, so basically we've become a nation of fairly lazy people who, you know, can now go out and buy in 20 minutes a ready meal, a ready, fairly high quality, ready gourmet meal and a bottle of wine for a tenner. And, you know, there's no problem. 10 o'clock at night, you fancy something to eat, you go get it. Whereas when you are in a situation where there is no access, you are locked down, you can't go out, you can't just pop to the shops and get what you fancy. You have to make some changes to your lifestyle. So that's what we're doing. We're making some bread. Okay, so I'm going to simply put this mixture of warmed yeast. I don't know whether I can turn that up so you can see it, but it's a milky, cloudy coloured liquid, and that's sort of tepid, and I'm going to pour that straight into my flour. Dead simple. I mean, there's nothing complicated at all, and I'm actually going to just put in there, for a double mixture I need 4 tablespoons of olive oil. So 1, 2, 3 and 4, and literally that, guys, is it. That is all the ingredients you need. Okay, take that out, and I'm going to turn this on. Just bear with me for a minute. I'm going to leave you now. I'm just going to go outside here and just leave that kneading on the machine and show you today's weather outside, which is very pretty and very sunny and blue skies. Just while that's kneading, just to show you, we're very, very lucky. Obviously, I count myself really lucky to be in such a lovely place. But it's very eerie. We've got neighbours over here. We've got Sebastian, Sabrina and their children. And then just over the road, his brother Fred at the farm with their children, Fred and Lolo. And then we've got Madame Bertola. And then just down the bottom we have Dominique and Aline. So these are our neighbours. Marcel and Edith are not here. They're away at their house in Orleans. And so we're used to having people around. We're used to hearing, I don't know, people's playing in the garden, tractors. We've lost a bit of connection there. We've mowed the lawn since we came back and we've done a few jobs. First mowing, got the tulips and the daffodils starting to come out now. and it's very quiet. So it is strange. It sort of feels a bit surreal that the world is going on around us, and we're not in it. We're not part of it. We kind of feel a bit disjointed. It's sort of like, you know, you can still be miserable in paradise. So Napoleon, on the other hand, is not miserable at all. Well, he was this morning. Sorry, we lose connection when I came out, because he had a bath. Napoleon had a bath, didn't you, Naps? You're all nice and clean. So I'm going to pop you back on there. And there we go. It's our bread dough ready. So it's all kneaded. It's all come away from the bowl. Nothing left inside the bowl. And that's had a really good kneading. And I'm just going to take that out. Lift up the Kenwood there. Just put a little bit of flour, just so that I can bring back together my dough. Best thing to do is from the back, pull it towards the front and push. Back, front, push. Back, front, push. Okay, just so that we've got a nice smooth top on our dough. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to take myself a bowl, and I'm just going to spray that. You can just wipe it out with some vegetable oil or anything you have in the house, but I have some of this spray oil, which is really useful for getting things out of tins. So a coat of that into there, and then I'm just going to get my cling film and cling film over the top and leave that in a warm place to double in size. And that, guys, is literally it. So that's very simple. And just put that there. It's all oiled. It's not going to actually get that high that it'll touch the film, but if you've got a smaller bowl, you can actually oil the surface of your cling film too. So I'm going to take that into the kitchen in a second and put that somewhere to rise, and we're going to continue with the second lot, which is the no yeast baking powder bread. And I'm going to use the same bowl, doesn't matter about that. Okay, technical hitch. My arm is really weak at the moment because while I was in the Alps, I have damaged my shoulder. There we go, that's better. So I'm just going to pop that, see if it's not too heavy for that. Okay, that's 500 grams. I'm going to put 500 grams of the plain flour. Now this is the no yeast bread, guys. This is the one you're waiting for. Just wanted to get that one done first. Because that does take longer to rise, and you have to knock that back and then put it into your tin and rise it again. So I thought we'll make this one second. So we're up to 500 grams of flour, which is great. And we're still having bin deliveries, so we're still recycling. And into that goes 2 teaspoons of baking powder. Now I've got sachets, but I've also got this, so I'm going to use up this first. In French this is the levure chimique, and in England it is the baking powder. So we're just going to put in, I think I've just got 2 teaspoons in there. Oh, that's perfect. Right, so 2 teaspoons of baking powder in there, dead simple. We're going to put some salt in there. Don't worry, because we've no yeast in it, so it's nothing to kill it. So we're just going to put 1 good teaspoon of salt. And then what we need is 310 mils of milk. So I'm going to hope that I have actually got 310 mils in this container, because I didn't actually think to to go and get another one. How silly is that? Oh. Do excuse me. I'm fine. I've just got a cold. Yeah, no, yes, Rosalie, no yeast baking powder bread. So, bear with me. I'm going to take you over to my little garde-manger where I keep all my supplies and hope that we've got a bit of signal and get some more. I'm back with milk. So we just lost a little bit of connection there. I'm just going to quickly put the rest of my milk into here. Technical hitch. Okay, it's 170. Let's pop it in here. And I'm just going to put you back on there. Gosh, totally rubbish camera operator today. So let's try and get you back. Right, so this is the milk. And I'm just going to pop in, if I am correct, because I don't remember exactly how much was in there. Get it back to 0. Okay. So let's hope we've got the right amount in there, because my scales just, I was rushing to get back because my scales went back to 0. Okay, so we'll give this a try, but this is the general idea. So we're going to pop the dough hook back in. A long time on the machine. It just needs to come together into a sort of a springy dough, okay, because there's no active ingredient in here, so we've got no yeast. So I'm just going to, it's very sticky because it's not the same kind of consistency as the yeasted bread. I'm just going to pop a bit of flour down here just so I can bring that together and we can get that in the oven. So I'm pulling again in the same sort of kneading action, just so that we can get back together. Sorry, I apologise, those of you who can't see very well. I have no camera operator. I'm a one-man band today, so you'll just have to bear with me. So I'm just doing the same, pushing it to the back, pulling it forward and kneading it. And I'm just bringing that round so I've got a fairly nice smooth top. Now the important thing about this bread is that you can't cook a loaf of it. You only have to have it at 1.5 inches thick. A bit like rolling out a scone or a biscuit mix. Simply because it hasn't got the same raising ability, the same raising agent in it that the normal bread with the yeast has. So really, very simply, you can cook this on a bread stone, or I've got one of these stone baker dishes. Well, that's fine. We don't all have dishes of every size. I haven't got dishes of every size. I've got lots and lots of dishes, but you know, there's always something you're missing. So I'm simply going to bring that back, and I'm going to get a rolling pin out of my magic drawer. Let's pop him up there, and I'm just going to roll that to about 3 centimetres thick, about 1.5 inches thick. It has got tension in the dough because the baking powder, a bit like making, I suppose, making a sort of a risen biscuit, it's starting to work, it's starting to do its thing. So I'm just going to roll it into a sort of a nice, relatively pretty bar shape, bearing in mind that it will have a life of its own when it's in the oven. So it's not necessarily going to stay absolutely perfect like that. And that, my friends, is literally all you want to do. I'm just going to put, you don't have to grease a stone baker, but I like to grease everything just to make sure it doesn't actually stick. You can, I suppose, score it a little, but there's actually not much point doing too much because we want to see how that baking powder rises up. So I'm just going to score it a little just to see. You can actually score it in a nice checkered pattern and see what that comes out like. So what you have is a sort of 1.5 inches thick paste, which I'm going to drop into my baker just like that. And then we're going to see when that goes in the oven at 190 and it cooks for 30 minutes. As I say with everything, everybody's ovens are different. Everybody's you know, ventilated ovens, gas ovens, they're all going to be very different. So basically we just want to make sure that it's brown, golden, and that when you turn it over it's crisp on the bottom and slightly hollow in the centre. And that is our no yeast baking powder bread. So for all of you who've been sending me messages saying, yeah, I'd love to make my own bread but I don't have any yeast, that is going to be perhaps a solution. I'm going to try in a couple of days another recipe for you, which is something we make here. It's a little bit like a pita bread, and it's from the region of Chinon. And basically you roll out your thin disc of dough and pop it into a really hot dry pan and turn it over, and then it will souffle up and cook almost instantaneously, and then you can put pate in there or garlic butter in there or whatever you want. So I hope you've enjoyed that. We'll come back later and see what comes out the oven. Bye everyone.